Well, good morning. This is Live Mike, and I'm your host, Michael Gantt. Good to have you with us in the stream today. I've got a very special guest I'm going to be introducing in a few minutes, and we're going to have some fascinating conversation. Let me just bring us up on a couple of program notes, but I want to remind you, first of all, if you join with us live this morning, we do have a chat option where you can ask questions, you can put in comments, you can say hello, you can say good morning, you can say have a nice day, and go get another cup of coffee. But do let us know that you're in here. And of course, if you don't get the whole program or miss it altogether, it will be online on YouTube, on Facebook, and on the X platform going forward from now into whenever Facebook decides to shut me down. Anyway, let me just bring you up to speed, excuse me, on a couple of upcoming programs. And I say this when I introduce him. Back by popular demand is my young friend, Stephen Dross. Stephen is a pastor in Agawam, Massachusetts, down at Redeeming the Times Ministries. He is a fascinating young man, absolutely brilliant theologian, preacher, pastor, and rap singer. Of all of those combinations, the last time I had Stephen on, people enjoyed him so much they keep sending me messages. When is Stephen Dross coming back? Well, he's coming back October 2nd at 8:30 p.m. That's just next Thursday, this coming Thursday at 8:30 on Night Mike. You will love Stephen Dross if you've not met him as of yet. And then on October 9th, my special guest is a young man by the name of Leon Moore. He has spent most of his life in public service, particularly child services. And he and his family and a team that he's put together are putting together a new ministry called On Solid Ground Mission. And it's coming together right now. And I wanted Leon to have the opportunity to share with you about what he's doing. He has worked for years in the foster care system and noticed that many of the young people who are aging out of foster care are aging out of that support system and don't really have any support system to move into. And so Leon is setting up a ministry of literally mentoring young people who are aging out of the foster care system, but need a little hand and a little direction as they go. So that's going to be October 9th on Night Mike, right here at 8:30. And then on the 28th of October, it's the only thing that I have booked now, I'm going to have my special guest, Patricia Durgan. She's a good friend of mine for many years. She's a vivacious, outgoing, exciting lady to talk to. She actually does marketing for authors and influencers and podcasters, and she's just a brilliant gal, and she brings a kind of a excited view to everything. So Patricia's going to be my guest on Live Mike on October 28th at 9 a.m. Please join us. We'd love to have you. So this morning I have a good friend, a young fellow that I met several years ago at a Christian Writers Conference down in Philadelphia. We had lunch together and hit it right off. His name is Bill Watkins, sometimes known as William Watkins. Good morning, Bill. How are you today?
Good morning. It's good to see you, Mike.
From is it Longmont, Colorado? Yes. Is that how it's pronounced? I know I've driven through there a couple of times on the way up to Estes Park, but wasn't sure if I remembered how to pronounce it. It's Longmont, right?
Right.
Yeah. Bill, you are an author. You are an editor. You are still an editor with Broad Street Publishing. I think you said you're part-time now, and you have your own business, which is called Literary Solutions. I had all this stuff written down, and then that paper is somewhere on my desk here. So, but you have a degree in philosophy and a degree in theology, which is an interesting mix. We were chatting before we came online, and about a couple of books that you're working on. But before we get into what it is that you do and what it is you write about, I'd love to have you introduce yourself to our folks and tell us a little bit about you, where you're from. I think you're originally from California, aren't you?
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Central Valley of Fresno. I was adopted from birth. or close to birth. I was a few weeks old.
Well, that's amazing. Let me just interrupt you. The last three people I think I've had online talking about various things were adopted. And
Yeah,
that's
I
a
love to
pattern
get
I
in.
seem to be
I love
running
to get
into.
into abortion discussions.
I'm sorry?
I love to get into abortion discussions because when somebody, tells me, well, isn't it better to have a wanted child? And I said, well, yeah, and there are lots of people who want children.
That's right. Yeah.
And I
And
am an
and
example of
someone has said if you are adopted, it means you were specifically chosen.
that. That's right.
Somebody wanted you. There are no accidental adoptions.
That's right. Exactly.
And and isn't it great that we are adopted into the great family of God?
That is the best family.
Amen. Amen. So yeah, it is, and boy, I don't want to go off on a bunny tail too quick, but so many young people who are adopted and find out maybe later on in life, I find so many of them, it causes tremendous emotional stress.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's feelings of abandonment, or why didn't my mother want me, or something like that. But I guess, I've known you for quite a while. I did not know until just this minute that you were adopted. So tell us more. Fresno. I drove through there. It's been a whole week there one night.
Well, when I grew up there, it was about maybe 60, 70,000 residents. It wasn't large. Now it's 1.5 million
Wow, big
population
town.
city. So, but anyway, my parents were awesome. Very attentive, very smart, um, and both Christians.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was from the South. My dad was from California, Riverside, California,
Mm-hmm.
and they met while he was in the military.
Yep.
In the Midwest. So anyway, I grew up there, and I was my parents were part of the Methodist church in the region, and they helped start a couple of churches while I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But the Methodist church has this practice, at least it did then, of never letting a pastor stay in one place for more than 5 years.
That's right. I think that still holds true.
So, but you never knew who you were going to get and what their theology was going to be.
Right.
So it went from a more biblical tradition, gospel focused church to very, very liberal, where the sermons were really just political. And so I grew up in that religious context, but it was so by the time well, and then I had an experience when I was around 11 or 12 years old. I had a great imagination as a kid, and I was out in the backyard and of our home and in Fresno, and I was looking up at the night sky, and it was just beautiful. And then I started to play a game in my head that would, what would it be like if I was the only person in Fresno? And so I imagined that scenario, and I said, well, what if I was the only person in the United States? Imagine that scenario. I said, what if I was the only person in the universe? And I panicked. I just it was like everything crashed in on me. I was utterly alone. And I actually ran back into the house to assure myself that I was not alone.
Somebody was still here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that experience began to provoke questions in me. Like, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Things like that. And I when I opened up about these questions to my dad, he didn't know what I was talking about. He was no help. He was a lot of help on a lot of things, but he wasn't on that. And so I was left to my own devices to kind of sort it out. And because I was too shy to ask a lot of other people about it, so these things just percolated within me. So by the time I graduated from high school, I had become an atheist. And and I was in the music world. I was already making a fair amount of money playing music in Fresno, and so I was playing music. Went into college. Eventually, and about 2 years into college, there were some musicians who I admired, who were going to this church in Fresno, and they were playing in the orchestra. And I mean, and these are really fine musicians. And so I went one evening when they were there and they were doing this service, and just to hear them and find out what was going on. And so I'll make this shorter. In that music program, I eventually got involved, and I played drum set and percussion, and then and this church was unbelievable. This church was a gospel centered, gospel preaching, evangelistic Baptist church. Mm-hmm. And I heard the gospel every time I showed up to church.
Yeah.
It was just the way it was. And so I thought it was hogwash, of course. I was playing in this group, and I thought, and by this time I was playing in about 3 different music groups in the church.
In the church?
Yeah.
As an atheist?
Yes. But they didn't know I was an atheist. At least I thought they didn't know.
Yeah.
But after I became a Christian, I realized they had been praying for me the whole time. Yeah. They knew. And so after about 6 months, there was this speaker who came from Hawaii, and he spoke, and I had never heard a man speak this way. And I was drawn in, and the Spirit was at work. And when they did an altar call that night, I felt this compulsion on the inside, and I didn't hear an audible voice, but the sense was, if I don't go forward now, I never will. Mm. And so I went forward. I accepted Christ. I wept like a baby because I just felt this heavy lifting of sin just come off me, and I was liberated. I mean, I felt free for the first time in my life, totally free. I was excited and just in love with God for what he had done. And here an atheist is accepting him, and on what basis? No one had given me a case for Christ, but when I prayed that he was real. I didn't know. I just said, if you're real, I need you. Mm. And I need deliverance from my own sin.
Yeah.
And he did it.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
And you were no longer alone.
No, not at all. Well, I inherited a big family.
Well, I think it's amazing. I'm imagining that was probably in the 60s.
It was in 1972.
Okay,
April
so
23rd,
right on the tail end of the Jesus Revolution that was sweeping across America. Right. I was not adopted, but I was abandoned by my mother at 16 months and put in the foster care system. She showed back up when I was almost 8 years old, and I lived with her until I left home and got married, and then she came to live with me until she died. But there were times when I remember feeling very, very alone, even though there were people around me. Sure. I think it's wonderful, though, that these people drew you in, accepted you, said, yeah, play with us, it'll be great. Yeah. And all the time they had an ulterior motive, and that was they would come to know Christ. I've been a pastor for almost 60 years now, and that would not be unusual for me to do, to let someone believe that they were fooling everybody.
Right.
And matter of fact, I just baptized a young lady on Sunday who has been coming to church for quite a while. Really, I don't know any other word to say except messed up background. And over the last few months, God has just really put her back together again, and it's been amazing to watch. And so, she showed up. We had announced a baptismal service for yesterday morning. She was not on the Sunday morning. She was not on the list, but she showed up with a towel and a change of clothes, and so it was great. So you accepted the Lord, and now you are, let's see, 70s. You must be in college now.
Yeah, I was just shy of my 20th birthday when I accepted Christ, and I was still in college, but and my orientation, my understanding of the world, my understanding of life, and so
Mm-hmm.
on began to change,
Yeah.
and I started reading scripture. It was difficult. Some of it was difficult. I wasn't quite sure what it all meant, but I was getting enough
Mm-hmm.
understanding to where I knew that this was the truth, and I needed to pay careful attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
And but I eventually dropped out of college. I was making money as a musician. That's what I wanted to do, so I just
Right.
kept doing it. And then I changed churches. I was in an evangelical free church, and the
Mm-hmm.
pastor there was Rick Yon.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to know each other. And again, as a musician, I was in the music program. And he and I were talking one day in his office, and I said, I think God has gifted me in music, and He wants me to be a musician and live that life. And he sat back in his chair and he looked at me and he said, I don't think that's what God has for you.
Hmm.
And I laughed. And I said, well, of course He does. This is it's
what,
clear.
it's
It's
what I
clear.
want to do.
Yeah, it's clear. And he goes, no, I don't think that's it. And then he turned to a passage in Proverbs
Mm-hmm.
that says, if a man be faithful to his gift, God will bring him before great men.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not sure what your giftedness is right now, but I don't think it's going to be music. And so a few months later, I had started to learn about Christian apologetics, and I was really getting into it. And I went to one of the pastors of the church, and I said, I think we need someone to teach a class in Christian apologetics.
Hmm.
And I even came with an outline.
Yeah.
And I came with some books, and he looked at all of it, and and then he looked at me and he said, I know just the person to teach it. I said, great. Who would it be? You.
Yeah.
You're the one with the passion. You're the one with the knowledge. I'll tell you what, I'll give you 30 days. You come back with a plan for a 12-week class. So I did.
Mm-hmm.
I taught that class, changed my life. And I ended up going back to school. I ended up changing my major from music to philosophy, graduated with a degree in philosophy. And toward the end of that, I just knew I needed to go to seminary because I needed to be steeped in the Word of God.
Yeah.
I needed that to guide me because I knew human philosophy, even though I learned some things there, that ultimately it was a dead end.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to seminary, and that reshaped my life, and became a teaching assistant of a man named Norman Geisler, one of the best Christian apologists,
right. Yeah.
In the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing. I mean, then the trajectory of my life just took off.
Mm.
So, but I never forgot Rick Yon's words.
Yeah.
Be faithful to my gift, and he was right. It wasn't.
Well, it's interesting. I was headed to Bible college, but I was also involved in gospel music, and what I really wanted to do was sing. And I remember that I had an invitation to actually go sing with a pretty well known quartet, internationally known quartet. And I was all signed up and ready to go. I had the music. I was going through the music. I was going to join them on the tour. And And right in the middle of those preparations, God said to me, I didn't call you to sing, I called you to preach.
Mm-hmm.
And music has always been a big part of my ministry, but it's never been my ministry as much as I love gospel music. And my wife and I met singing in the same group. She was 15 years old when we started hanging out together, and 58 years later, we've been married 56 years now. But no, God was very clear to me. I've called you to preach. And I still remember my first sermon. It was probably, could go on record as the worst sermon ever preached. But I knew at the end of that meeting, I knew what God had called me to do. And I've done a lot of things to pay the bills, but my heart has always been in the pulpit, and teaching. So we actually met. I don't remember the year, but we actually crossed paths in Philadelphia at the Philadelphia Christian Writers Conference,
Right.
which was a funny situation, Bill, because Marlene Bagnall directed that conference, and somebody had given her a copy of a blog piece that I had written on my blog and said, I think you will enjoy this. You might want to consider asking this guy to come to one of the conferences to speak. And so I got this invitation to speak, and I thought it was odd because they're asking me to stand in front of all of these writers and editors and everything, and at a writers conference, and I'd never written anything but on my blog site.
Yeah.
And yet I fell into that thing and made so many friends, including you and Peter Lundell and Barb Haley, and the list goes on and on and on, the people that are involved in that. And I shared with folks last week when I was kind of promoting this interview, I said, Bill Watkins is one of the reasons that I'm writing today. Oh. You were one of the main influences in encouraging me to start to write. But I still remember we were on campus somewhere. I even forget where. Was it at Carn University? That I think it was. We met in the dining hall, and you sat down and said, would you have lunch with me? And we talked. And I think it was then very quickly that our friendship developed.
Yes.
And because I saw a lot of, our heart and our minds thinking similar troughs. And
yes.
So I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed that relationship, even though we live at opposite ends of the country. We get together every once in a while. One of the things I miss over the last few years is those conferences have gone virtual, and I miss that, getting together with people and seeing them.
Well, that's one of the things I think you can't replace. Virtual reality can't replace that one-on-one, in-person interaction.
No.
That kind of engagement, and there's something too about having coffee together, or soda, or breaking bread together.
Yeah.
That's just it brings people together, I think, in a better way.
Well, that's what we were meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
God made us social creatures.
That's right.
And we were talking about family early on. I mean, we are really one big family, and although we're not getting along very well right now in terms of humanity, as some families struggle to do. But and even in the church, I think sometimes there's a lot of stress in getting along, and especially in these days. I read, I'm on various social media things, and I look at brothers going after each other, and I go, wow, a little Cain and Abel thing going on here. But the bottom line is we all have the same Father.
We do. I just wish everyone realized that.
Yeah.
Well,
I was really I loved of course the sad event of last week was Vodi Bokum died, and he was one of my favorite preachers. I loved to listen to Vodi take a straw argument and just dismantle it, and very carefully lay all the pieces of straw to the side and get to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
And just a great guy. But I remember him dealing with the whole issue of race,
Mm-hmm.
and he said there are not many races. There's
No.
one race. I have a little bit more coloring in me than you do, but the genetically we are the same.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Differences in melanin does not make a race.
That's right. That's right. But there are nefarious influences that use our differences in melanin as a means to divide us.
Yes.
And so much in our world today, so much of the arguments and everything are wrapped around race. And for a while, I thought we had really gotten that thing under control, but I think some forces purposely fired up the gens again to get race to become a very divisive, ugly thing.
Well, there's a reason for this. What's called today as racism has always bothered me. I
Yeah.
never liked it. I always opposed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought after the civil rights movement and moving through the
Mm-hmm.
60s and 70s and
Mm-hmm.
into the 80s that would just that was finally behind us. But it came back up, and it came back up. And some people who hear our dialogue are not going to like what I'm going to say, but I can prove it.
Yeah.
It came back up through neo-Marxists who they had realized that what Karl Marx had said about the class struggle was completely backfiring.
Yeah.
The people who were supposed to rise up against the bourgeoisie, against the wealthy and the powerful, they were the wealthy and the powerful were actually providing a living for them through industry, and they began to make a good living, and they began to provide for their families, and they began to do all those things. So when a Marxist came in and said, "Rise up," they said, "You kidding? I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me."
Right. Yeah.
So they had to reshape Marxism, and so the Marxism that we see today is nothing like what Karl Marx argued. Instead, they went to identity politics.
Right.
It became about race, and it became about gender, and it became other things. So the goal of Marxism, or one of the primary goals, is to divide humanity, to pit one group against another group, or these groups against these groups, to get them to oppose each other and fight against each other, because you've got to promote a revolution. And the revolution is going to be more than policy. It's going to be violent.
Right. Right.
And that's what they want. And so that's what they're trying, and race has become a part of it.
And in a little bit older language that most people don't remember today, that's called dialectical materialism. All of society is moved forward by means of revolution.
Yes.
Everything is about, and I will tell you, I think that the real racism in America was really fomented by Barack Obama.
He pushed it farther than anybody had before.
Yeah. That became the hallmark of his presidency, as far as I'm concerned. He and Michelle really opened up that wound again.
Yes.
And now it is the worst it's been in a century.
Right.
It is terrible.
Well, and another characteristic of Marxism is globalism.
Yeah.
It's to create a one world society.
Yep.
Which of course requires a one world government.
Right.
Marxism ultimately thought you could get humanity to a point where there would be no government, but that's just stupid. There's no way that people can govern themselves as a society without some kind of overarching authority that doesn't have to be authoritarian, doesn't have to be oppressive, but some kind of governing guidance
Right.
for the society. So Marxism always collapses
Hmm.
into a dictatorship
Right.
or totalitarianism, however
Right.
you want to describe it.
Yeah.
It always collapses into that.
And there really is no
And
such thing.
socialism eventually does too.
Well, and socialism is, somebody said, what is socialism? Is communism without a gun.
That's yeah.
As soon as they get the guns, it becomes communism.
I call it communism light.
Yeah, communism light.
It's like communism. It's like a Diet Coke. It's not the real thing, but it's kind of close.
Yeah, kind of close.
And that's what socialism is to communism. It's
Well,
not,
I think New York
body,
City may get a taste of it in the coming election. It looks like, and that's going to be a sad situation. But maybe people need to see the whole collapse of it in a micro setting type thing, because they seem to be bent on New York City seems to be bent on electing this guy Mondani to be the mayor. I mean, can't wait to see those government-run grocery stores.
Yeah, if you want to see that, go to Cuba.
Yeah,
will show you what it looks like.
That's right. Actually, we had two gals from our church just recently came back from a mission trip to Cuba, which is a new thing. That they would actually accept missionaries.
Well,
so
you and I remember the long gas lines in the 70s.
Oh, yes, I do. Oh, because I was traveling at that time.
Yeah.
And I remember we would get to a particular stage in our trip and just have to spend the night, because they had odd even days in some states where you could only buy, depending on your license plate, you could only buy on an odd day or an even day. And if you landed in the wrong place at the wrong time, you had to spend the night before you could get gas. Yeah, that whole thing is that's got pretty weak underpinnings. And I want to ask you about a book you wrote some years ago.
Sure.
Called The New Absolutes.
Yes.
I was looking at as a matter of fact, I want to put this up. This is out of from a review of your book, and it says, in his book, The New Absolutes, William Watkins contrasts 10 traditional beliefs, old absolutes, with the 10 beliefs that are replacing them, the new absolutes. Though these new beliefs might not be absolute in strict philosophical sense, they function as absolutes in contemporary society. What in the world does that mean?
Well, first of all, here's what it means in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
People who claim that truth is relative, which means some truths apply to me, they may not apply to you, or they would put it, some things are true to me, some things are true to you. So you hear people talk about my truth.
Oh yeah.
As if something can be true for you and not be true for others. So, but what I discovered when I was working at the American Center for Law and Justice is that these groups who were claiming truth was relative were taking people to court to make people adhere to what they believed was true. Well, that's not what relativists do. Relativists say, well, that may be good for you, but it's not good for me. Or that may be true for you, but it's not true for me.
And let's go get coffee.
Yeah, or that may be good for one culture, but it's not good for another culture. Right. And but only absolutists struggle with each other over what is true and what is good.
Yeah.
And so I thought there's something else going on here. This relativism idea doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And so what I concluded is the so-called relativists were really closet absolutists. Mm-hmm. And they really believed that what they thought was true should be true for everyone, and actually is true for everyone. They just need to be compelled to see it. Mm. And now these days they're not closet absolutists. They're all out in the open, and they're all pushing, whatever agenda that they have. So what I did in the New Absolutes is I went through 10 propositions that we used to hold as true. I mean, absolutely true, at
Right.
least in the United States. And what the new absolute was, what we were moving toward, and some of us had already accepted.
Mhm.
Like, for example, let's talk about life. It used to be the case in the United States that life was protected from the womb to the tomb.
Right.
That was the absolute. Now, were there exceptions? Of course, there are always exceptions to these, but that was the belief, and that was what everybody was moving toward, and or had already embraced. But now it's life is worthy if it's convenient, cost effective, and it matters to me.
To me, yeah. Yeah.
So that's really the underpinning of the abortion movement. That's one of the underpinnings. And the other one is just flat out bigotry,
Yeah.
because Margaret Sanger, the founder of all this, by the way, she wasn't for abortion at first. She actually opposed abortion.
Hmm.
And I've got the writings to prove it.
Uh-huh.
And I even mentioned them in the New Absolutes. I show it.
Hmm.
But she eventually shifted to seeing abortion as a form of contraception, which she had rejected previously. But her goal with the Planned Parenthood clinics was to put them in low income colored neighborhoods.
Right.
And by the way, most of Planned Parenthood clinics are in those neighborhoods still today,
Right.
because she saw certain people as unfit to have life.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just better for society if they go away. So if you can kill their offspring, eventually you'll kill their ability to spread. That was her idea. She saw them as a disease.
And you know what? That is an underlying philosophy of the enemy,
Yes,
who comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
that's right.
And I think people miss that what we have done is we've not only shifted philosophies, we've exchanged gods.
Yes, yes.
And
Yeah,
now we wouldn't say, my God is the devil. We would simply adopt his attitude toward things and say, this is my choice. This is what I want to do. And one of the things that I'm really blessed by is the number of Black men who are coming out now and saying, look where they open these Planned Parenthood offices. Look where these things are located. Look who their target audience
exactly.
is.
Exactly.
But I think that's grown. Now it's just life in general. We have transitioned from being a culture that embraced life to a culture now that embraces death. I mean, let's face it. I said in something I wrote, I don't remember if it was a blog or one of the books that I wrote, is that the generation that was aborted by its parents will have no problem aborting their parents. And that's where we're moving. You talked about life was precious from the womb to the tomb. It is now held in equal disdain from the womb to the tomb.
That's right.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it's not that we have abandoned absolutes. We've just rewritten them.
Yeah, we've changed. We've abandoned an older set of absolutes for new absolutes. And now, are some of those new absolutes, when I wrote the book, have any of them changed? Only in the degree they've gotten worse.
Yeah. Well.
Otherwise, what I wrote back, this was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
What I wrote back then is still pretty much true.
Yeah.
It's really, really sad to see, Mike. I hate seeing people destroy themselves like this. That is not what we were created for.
Amen. Well, if you look, let's go back to last week when Charlie Kirk was killed. Basically, he was aborted.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was
aborted. I don't like what he says. I hate what he says. I hate him. He needs to be aborted.
Yeah, and that's and the assassin. It's interesting. The assassin was he was from the left. He He had imbibed transgender ideology, and he saw what Kirk was advocating as a direct threat to him and his lover.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, you got to be really narcissistic to make that connection.
A lot of that going around these days.
Yeah, I mean, really narcissistic. But the other thing is if you think about it in a broader context, what he had done is his transgender ideology had become larger. It had become his entire worldview, and that embraces everything. And so you see someone who's opposing it and who is moving people away from it, and you see your life, your very life, threatened. And so he thought the only way to do it, to save it, was to take out Charlie Kirk. Now, it completely backfired. You know, there's an Old Testament theme, and the Old Testament theme, I pray the Psalms every few years.
Yeah.
And the Old Testament theme is the wicked will lay traps, but God will make sure that they fall into their own traps.
They fall into their own traps. Yeah.
And that's what we pray for. I mean, that's what I pray for. When Jesus said, pray for your enemies, here's how I hear that now. He didn't say how to pray.
No,
he didn't say what to pray. He said, pray for them. So I pray two things. One, that they eventually see the light and come to Christ. That's number one. But number two, if they won't do that, I pray that they fall into their own traps.
Yeah. They forget where they laid the traps. Well, you know, the other thing, I have a similar prayer. I often pray, particularly when people are met with very, very difficult circumstances. You know, they're falsely accused or something like that. One of my prayers constantly is, Father, I pray that everything that is hidden will be brought to light.
Yes.
That it will be exposed.
Yes.
Rather than getting all worked up, you know, in whatever situation I'm in, there is something hidden in the darkness,
right.
And the answer is for that to be revealed. And so I find that's one of the prayers that I pray often, and I agree. We should pray that our enemies come to light, and that they see the light, and that they're delivered from the darkness that they're in. But we also, and I think, boy, that's good understanding, that we need to pray if they refuse the light. Well, if you think about it, if they're walking in darkness, it's easy to fall into a trap, even
it's much
if
easier.
you're late in it. Yeah. But most people don't believe it applies to them.
Well, that's true. But you know what? One of the ways to wake people up is for them to suffer some of the consequences they were trying to push on others. If that can have a boomerang effect, and God can use that too. You know, those prayers are not contrary to each other. Praying that someone come to Christ, praying that someone come to the light, but also praying if they won't, that they fall into their own traps. That gives them, that falling into their own traps gives them an opportunity to wake up.
Yeah. So, whoa, wait a minute.
See the truth.
Right.
You know, I mean, how many people have been so far down in their lives, so flat on their back because of their own actions,
right?
That they finally go, I don't want to live like this anymore.
Let me name one. Chuck Colson.
Yes. Well, I can name one. Yes, Chuck Colson. I can name one close to my family. My son, who has carved out a wonderful life for himself and is a believer, and his son is a believer. But my son, there was a time in his growing up that I thought he was gonna die. He was into drugs. He even got to the point where he sold drugs. He was the object of a sting operation of the local police. I mean, it was bad. And he ended up in jail twice. The second time he was in there, he said, Dad, I looked at myself and I looked at my life and I thought, is this going to be it? Is this going to be my life?
Yeah.
That I don't want it.
Yeah.
And that was his bottom.
Yeah.
That was him falling into his own traps. And so I'm so grateful that he saw the light. The problem is there are some people who are so hard-hearted, they will never see it.
Yeah.
They've
And they
done it to
blame others
themselves.
for the place they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I look at, you, again, going back to some of the black men who are really starting to plead with their own people. Take a look at what we're doing. This is, stop telling me that you're oppressed.
Right.
You're not oppressed. I can send you places where you can be oppressed.
Right.
This is not one of them. The oppression that is being preached, even in the halls of Congress, the oppression that's being preached is not real.
No.
It's not real. It is an oppression of the mind and the heart, and the acceptance of certain ideas that is the oppressor.
Yes.
And I think it's a sad thing, but I keep hearing people say, and these are black men who are saying, the problem in the black community is fathers who are not in the home.
Right.
And the percentage of babies that are being born to unwed mothers and the destruction of the family. And they'll go back and give the history of the black family in America and how they were prosperous and they were starting businesses and they were growing and they were going to school and getting an education. And then something fell apart and that all changed. And now the cry is, free us from the oppressor. And in most of our lives, white, black, green, yellow, or purple, is our own mind and our own heart. We put ourselves into oppression. Don't you think that's true?
Oh, I do. Absolutely. For about 40 years, I had a book in my library that I had not read. It was called Ideas Have Consequences by Richard Weaver.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote it, I think it was first published in 1949, and it's been in print ever since. What he did is he traced certain ideas, their origin, and all the way into the middle of the 20th century, showing the effects of those ideas. And I, as a philosophy student and graduate, and also as a theology student who also looked at the history of theology and the history of the church, I know ideas have consequences. I've also seen it in my own life. Good ideas will almost always have good consequences. Bad ideas will almost always have bad consequences.
Yeah.
And this neo-Marxism stuff that's taken over so much of the left is just destructive. It's distorted. It's tyrannical, and this is where a lot of oppression is coming from.
Right. We have our men's group on Monday night, and we're studying the book of Ephesians now. But one of the things that we talked about last night is it was a common statement when I was growing up. People would say, "Well, a young man's got to sow his wild oats," and I said the problem with that idea is what wild oats actually produce. And we used to say that as well, he's just got to get it out of his system. But what usually ends up getting it out of his system is the terrible crop that arises in his life because of those fun-filled years where he's sowing his wild oats. And then it takes an awful long time after you start sowing good oats for that crop to come in. And it's a pretty destructive cycle. But you're right, ideas, decisions. I say to young people all the time when they look at me and they say, well, I'm only hurting myself. I'm not hurting anybody else. And my response is, you have no idea. A generation from now, 2 generations from now. And I love to hold somebody did an amazing thing. they traced the genealogy of Jonathan and Sarah Edwards for 100 years. And then they put it next to this other guy, this godless criminal who lived at the same time. And they traced his descendants for 100 years. Absolutely eye-opening.
Wow.
You know, as the descendants of Jonathan Edwards, which were college professors, vice president, lawyers, teachers, pastors, you know, just a rich, and the, don't remember this guy's name, but I think his last name was Dukes, criminals, prostitutes, drug addicts, you know, the whole thing. Coming out of these two men who had the same opportunities but made different decisions.
That's right.
And so I'm doing a lot of men's conferences now. It seems to be where my heart has landed in the last few years, and we've developed in conjunction with some partners a series of men's conferences called Leadership and Legacy. Mm-hmm. That men are called to be the leader in their home, and they will leave a legacy. And we need to understand that all we can really leave to this world is our legacy.
Yes.
You know, what do we leave behind us?
Yes.
Men are really responding to that. They really are going, wow, and man, you know, and they look at the legacy their own fathers left them sometimes, which was pretty bad. And the wonderful part about the gospel is you can start your own legacy. You can break that chain.
Yeah.
You don't have to just, well, that's the way my grandpa was and the way my father was, and I guess that's the way I'll be. Yeah. I had a pretty bad legacy that I came out of, but through the grace of God, I said, I'm going to have a different legacy.
Yeah.
And men are hungry for that right now, I think.
Well, they are. And just men in general have been treated as if they're toxic in our culture.
Well, we've got a label for them now. They're toxic masculinity.
Yeah, and so it's there's a lot to make up for what our culture has done, but there are some redeemable features in our culture, mm-hmm. And I think bringing some of those forward are good. I think we still live with what I call a Judeo-Christian hangover. Mm-hmm. It's not a full-blown acceptance of Judeo-Christianity, but there's some remnants that are still mm-hmm. left. And if we can bring some of those remnants forward while fleshing them out in a big way, right. A larger biblical understanding of life, then I think we have a chance. But right now, our country it's under assault. It's been under assault for a long time.
Yeah,
but it's becoming worse.
Yeah. All right, we got about 5 minutes. Tell me what some of those redeemable qualities are. What do we need to be focusing attention on if we're going to really bring change? I mean, there's the obvious. We preach the gospel, preach the gospel, preach the gospel. But tell us what some of those qualities are that we need to be focusing on.
Well, first, all churches haven't gone woke.
That's right.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's definitely
not all of them. Yeah.
That's definitely redeemable. That's a great place to start. And there are people who still respond to the good news, respond favorably, and that's a wonderful thing. But we've got to have really good instruction for people. We have to help them see the difference between what Scripture presents as truth and what the culture shouts at us is supposed right. to be true and isn't. Right. But another thing is I'm really excited about the classical education movement in the United States. Mm-hmm. There are many parents at home who are teaching this kind of education, and there are others. There are schools like Hillsdale College,
right,
that are out there that are doing this, and that has a great opportunity to not only help us to understand that Western civilization is really the fruit of a Judeo-Christian worldview and what was true in the Enlightenment as opposed to what was false in the Enlightenment. And so that classical education movement is really important. So I see that as something that we can also help to advance. Mm-hmm. So those are just a few things. Politically, I would say this: we still have three branches of government in the United States. The Constitution isn't dead, even though it's taken a real beating, but not because of what Trump is doing,
That's right.
but because of what Republicans and Democrats did for decades in our country. It's come from both sides, but the left has become, I think, just a party of death, party of destruction, and I don't see any freedom in it at all.
Yeah, I remember Barack Obama famously saying that the Constitution was constantly getting in his way of leading the country. He said it's a serious, it makes it difficult to govern. And I remember a lot of people shouting, "It's supposed to."
Exactly.
and I think the thing that a lot of people miss is that Constitution brilliantly was written to protect the individual from the oppression by government, not to protect the government from the people, but to protect the people from government. And we kind of see it as a, something opposite that what it is, and this whole thing that I hear said a lot, the Constitution is a living document. And by that, it means we can change it. It's growing, and it's one of the few constants we've had in this country has been that document, those documents of our founding fathers, and they were designed to be difficult to change. Difficult. You can't just willy-nilly rewrite it. There's a process that you have to go through. That's a pretty hard mountain to climb, and they designed it that way.
That's right.
Of course, all those fellows were coming out of oppressive government, and they wanted to be free of that, and they wanted to be in charge of the government rather than the government being in charge of them. And I often say, so many people today, I mean, one of my biggest bugaboos is we're saving democracy. Well, we're not a democracy, okay? We're ruled by law. We're not mob ruled. We're not ruled by the majority. We're ruled by law. Right. And we're a democracy on voting day. But other than that, we're a republic.
Right.
And most people don't even our leaders, our president, we're saving democracy. Well, no, we need to save the republic.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's when your own leaders don't understand what we are. It's pretty scary.
It is scary. It's very scary. But you know what? We have an example. We have an example of that in the Old Testament, right? Mm-hmm. How many kings of Israel and Judah misled their people?
Oh yeah.
So it happens. But we, the people, it's our government. It's not owned by the politicians.
That's right.
What they want us to think. It's owned
a good friend of mine, John Goyette, who just lives across the state from me, wrote a book a few years ago called The Power of Return. And what he did was he traced all of the spiritual revivals that you see in the Old Testament of Israel. And it was a very, almost like an accountant did the thing. He looked at all of the conditions that existed that brought Israel to a time of revival or renewal. Yeah. And at the head of every one of them, Bill, was a strong, godly leader.
Yes, that's right.
He said it was always a man who stood up and said, "This is the way, let's go this way."
That's right.
And he led toward God. He led them back to God. They renewed the authority of the scriptures. He put God back on the throne. And then Israel was restored, and then, of course, they fell away again. But that's what I pray for. I said, if you want to pray for our leaders, pray that we'll turn on C-SPAN one day and our Congress will be on their faces before God, repenting for our sins and asking God to bless our nation again. Then we can see a national revival. And
that would be a political miracle.
Well, God is in the business of miracles.
Yes, he is.
But I think what's going to have to happen is, as you said, a few of these guys are going to have to fall into their own I watched the entire memorial service for Charlie Kirk, and I was incredibly blessed by some of the things that came out of the mouths of some of our politicians.
Me too.
Yeah. So, Bill Watkins, thank you very much for being my guest today. I really appreciate it. And I've enjoyed it. We're going to have to do it again. I can't wait to get together with you again. And so we can have a cup of coffee or a Coke.
Yes, that sounds
and
great.
enjoy the fellowship. And maybe one of these days I'll get back out that way, or we'll meet up at a conference somewhere. And it's just always a joy to chat with you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed my time with you, Mike, as always.
All right.
You're a wonderful man of God, and I appreciate it.
Well, I'm a man of God. We'll leave the wonderful to his side. But anyway, thank you, Bill. I'm going to say goodbye to you now, and then I'll say a couple of comments, and we'll get out of here. All right. God bless. Right. Well, that was my friend Bill Watkins, a tremendous man of God, philosopher, teacher, writer, somebody who's been a blessing in my life for many, many years. I write now. I've written a number of books, and I have to lay all of that at his feet because he's one of the several people who encouraged me to start writing. Listen, I want to remind you, join with me on Thursday night with Stephen Dross as we talk about some important stuff, and it'll be amazing. Join with me. Until then, I am looking for the right button to push. I'm Michael Gantt. This is Live Mike. And Bill, you stay right where you are. I'll get back to you in a minute. Goodbye. God bless.